Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
And I'm Jean Marie.
Collectively, we're the hosts of PodcastDX. On today's show, we're speaking with Frank. Frank is a president and founder of Sarcoidosis of Long Island. He's also a WeGo Health patient leader, a patient ambassador of Illumina Inc., which is a DNA genome mapping research company. He is a volunteer patient ambassador at the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, and I'd like to welcome you to the show, Frank.
Frank, you sound like a very busy man.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a great honor.
You know what, let's start off. I think finding out what sarcoidosis is probably would benefit our listeners because it's probably new to most of them. What can you tell us about it?
Oh, okay. Well, sarcoidosis, the definition of sarcoidosis is it's an inflammatory disease, and what it is characterized by formations of granulomas, tiny clumps inflammatory cells in one or more organs of the body. What happens is my white blood cells, instead of going to fight the disease, they go to fight it, and they clump together and form masses anywhere in your body.
Okay. So you have clumps of white blood cells.
What happens is, the white blood cells, they clump together, and they get for me, it actually attacks all my body. So it can happen in any part of your body, literally any organ in your body.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, Frank, what symptoms first led you to seek out medical care for this condition?
According to the Mayo Clinic, symptoms vary because depending on the organs that are affected. 95% of the sarcoidosis patients have it in their lungs. So the common symptoms are usually breathing difficulties, wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath. But also people have it in their eyes, so they have eye pain. They also get fatigue, weight loss, swollen lymph nodes, and night sweats. Also, it'll attack your bones. So a lot of sarcoidosis patients also get arthritis.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
And how long did it take you to get a diagnosis?
I'm actually a special case on this one. I was misdiagnosed in 2004 down in Florida. What happened is I went in because I also have IBS, and I had stomach trouble, and I was also having trouble breathing. So they did X-rays and a CT scan, and I saw that I had lumps in my lungs. So they had me get biopsies, and they said that they found that I had lung cancer.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
And a lot of people that happens, they say that, but unfortunately, the hospital down in Florida took one step. There's actually two steps beyond, which is that I ended up with chemo and radiation for 4 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, for misdiagnosed. Now the chemo actually helped me because it kept the masses from growing.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the radiation really hurt me because it brought my immune system down, which brings out more white blood cells. So it was actually was down to 95 pounds at one point.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and then in 2011, I moved back. Well, 2009, I moved back up to New York, and by 2011, I started having more troubles with the breathing, and so I had an X-ray done, and they said, "Oh, do you realize you have the masses in your lungs?" I thought I was in remission. Okay. So they did do a biopsy there, and then they found that I had sarcoidosis. So that's 2011 is when I originally got diagnosed.
Okay, so that was a rough start for that diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's terrible.
It's a tough one for me.
Yes,
it was a little tough because of how by the time I actually got diagnosed, they found that I already had it in 70 to 75% of my body.
Oh, wow.
Frank, during the pre-production, you were talking about stages because that was something that we were going to go into, and you mentioned it's somewhat of a misnomer. Can you explain to our audience?
Sure. Well, the doctors actually, they do carry stages, and most of the time it's for your lungs because, like I said, 95% of the patients have it in their lungs. But the misnomer about the stages is that you could be in stage. It's not like cancer, where you're stage 4 cancer. You know that you're towards the end. Where here, stage 4. You could be in stage 4 lung, or what they call pulmonary fibrosis, which is scarring of the lung tissue and permanent damage. But you can still be better off than somebody who's actually in stage 1 or 2. It's just a matter of how active the granulomas are at the time.
And then you say that it also affects different organs. So if somebody had a stage 1 in their heart, maybe that would be more important, more detrimental.
Yeah, like for me, it would be now I have it in 90% of my body. It's actually easier for me to say where I don't have it in my liver and kidneys.
Okay.
But my lungs are actually the best part of my body right now. When I first got diagnosed, my pulmonary function test was about 65%, and now I'm up to 95%.
Wow, that's excellent.
For you.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I'm still the rest of my body has not worked as well as my lungs have.
Okay. Frank, for patients that have a chronic condition where symptoms are recurring for several years, are there any long-term effects that could happen in the affected organ? Like, could there be permanent damage?
Yes. Now, this is another thing about sarcoidosis, is that 75% of patients who get diagnosed with sarcoidosis, if they get diagnosed early enough, they will go into remission.
Oh, okay.
Only about 25 to 30% of us, it ranges from 25 to 30% are actually chronically ill. And usually it's because they weren't diagnosed early enough.
Okay.
That's usually what happens. So, like, for me, because I wasn't checked up for 7 years, it had time to, go throughout my body at that point in time. So,
okay.
Yeah, so that was hard.
So are most of your organs then, do they have some portion of them that are permanently damaged because of that time that was wasted on the misdiagnosis?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Actually, like, my arthritis is, I live on a pain scale of 7 to 8 every day.
Oh, I'm so
wow.
sorry.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Normally it's the arthritis. It's literally throughout my body an arthritis perspective. And also I have neurosarcoidosis, which attacks the brain. Unfortunately for me, my memory is down to, my long-term memory is at 23%. My short-term is at 17%. So, you could tell the effects of that, and certain areas. But there are other sarcoidosis patients that have it in same spots as me, but they're not as bad. They call the disease a snowflake disease because no two patients have the same. Even though we have it in the same part of the body, we're not the same.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think we were going to ask you this, but how do they diagnose this disease then? Is it through biopsy or?
Normally it's biopsy. It's just a matter of where it is in the body. If you have it in your heart, it's kind of hard to biopsy it. So they do it through PET scan.
Okay.
It's my doctor actually says when I go through a PET scan, I'll light up like a Christmas tree. Because it just shows you every inflammation in the body. So that's the best way for heart. Even brain, they actually check it by doing spinal taps.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, do a spinal tap, and you'll see the masses actually in the spinal tap.
Okay.
It's actually enough fluid.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Now, depending on the different organs, Frank, are there different treatments for the different organs?
Yes. The only approved treatments actually right now for sarcoidosis, there's only 2, and one is prednisone, which in itself has so many side effects that it actually can hurt you just as much as it's helping you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is called Actar, ACHTAR. It's a gel, and it's also an IV that they can do. That one is a lot better on the side effects compared to, of course, the prednisone. And it just got approved 2 years ago. But now for different parts of different parts of the body, we do, for arthritis, we do use medicines that treat arthritis. It's not a cure. It's just more to help you to live with it. We do methotrexate, which is a chemo drug, but it does help. Another one is Remicade, and that's an IV. And there's like three or four different IV drugs that they will use, especially for the arthritis. They're not approved for sarcoidosis, so usually the doctor, the rheumatologist has to say you have arthritis, some form of arthritis, to actually get approved for it.
Okay. Wow, that's great. That's intense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
are you going through all of these yourself? Have your symptoms? You say that you're in remission now, but when your symptoms
No, I'm not. I'm not actually in remission myself. I'm actually. Unfortunately, in my case, I've tried. I'd say 90% of the drugs that I've used, and my body, for one reason or another, does not work well with it. The only, like for my arthritis, the only drug that actually worked a little bit is Cymbalta.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Which is really like a pain reducer.
Right.
That's the only thing that I actually act well through. Unfortunately, in my case, last year I was actually downgraded from chronic to terminal.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and part of it is because I also found out last year I had Parkinson's.
Right.
So unfortunately, Parkinson's and the sarcoidosis are attacking my brain at the same time, and really, not much. If they try one medicine for the Parkinson's, it hurts the sarcoidosis. So I'm in that limbo area of which I can and can't do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to talk about organ transplant as an option for some severe cases. Well, they can't do that for brains yet, but somebody in Europe wants to do it.
Yeah, I know. There are people who, like one of my best friends. She's actually up in Canada. She 2 years ago she had a lung transplant.
Okay.
And that's the most common transplant that they will do, of course, because it happens in 90% of the lungs. But there are people who actually even are up for heart transplant because it affects, unfortunately, when it hits the heart, they say for sarcoidosis, it's one of the most deadly areas.
That makes sense.
Because like I know people who have defibrillators. Like myself, I actually have what they call a loop monitor. It just checks, making sure that I don't have what I was getting, like what they call tachycardia, where it would jump and go fast, my heart rate.
Right.
So they keep an eye on that for me.
Okay.
But it's hard to have a heart transplant, and actually, so there's not many of that. But once it hits the heart, they say it's almost, it's really bad.
Well, if a person does obtain a transplant, will the sarcoidosis that's in your body, will that attack the new organ?
Unfortunately, like my friend, it has for her. She's actually going up for another one.
Okay.
Like they always tell you, if you have it just in your lungs and you have the lung transplant, the odds are it will not attack again.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Because what sarcoidosis is kind of weird because we don't have a cause. We don't know what causes sarcoidosis.
Okay.
But they know what excels it. And for us, it's really environmental. It's heavy dust, it's chemicals, and like molds, and sometimes even air within air quality can activate it.
Okay.
So you have to have something. They think it's a gene in your body that you have to have, and once it's activated by the environmental problems, that's when you find out that you have it. And otherwise, and we don't know if it's genetic either, so it's kind of hard to describe what's the cause because they don't have any idea at this point.
Right. When we had a few months ago, we spoke with the chief medical officer for the fire department for New York City, and he was saying that there's been a spike or an increase in cases of sarcoidosis because of the 9/11 attacks, and that it's taken a while for that to actually not resolve, but to form into that condition, but that they are seeing a spike in that.
It is just in New York itself. Mm-hmm. It has jumped since 9/11. Before 9/11, there's one hospital that's Mount Sinai, which is pretty much the biggest. It actually is the biggest sarcoidosis clinic in the world. And before 9/11, they were working on maybe 1,500 patients a year, but now they have over 18,000 patients.
Oh my God.
Yes, and they're actually getting 150 new patients a week.
Wow.
And are they equating this to the breathing that took place then at 9/11?
Yes. So yes, it's a breathing. Unfortunately they're finding a lot of chemicals over in that area.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a lot of that. I actually know of probably about 5 or 6 people that are from 9/11 that are just getting diagnosed now. From sarcoidosis. It's just a matter of what's going to kick it up. Like they may have had the sarcoidosis from day one, but it wasn't active, from 9/11. But once something else just kicks it up, and they're just finding it out now.
Right.
And also, didn't you say that that's not necessarily what they're looking for when you go into the doctor's office?
Yeah, it's actually what they call a disease of exclusion. Mm-hmm. To exclude everything else out before you actually find out that it's sarcoidosis.
Okay.
And Frank, I'm just curious, what kind of support do you have?
I have a great support team of, first of all, my wife and my daughter. My daughter's 16, and my wife actually, she married me after we found out, a couple of months after we found out that I actually had sarcoidosis. So she's been there from day one, which, for me, I'm on disability, so it was a lot of, took a lot out of her, of money, financials. Mm-hmm. But she's been working. She's the only one working, and she's always there. Always goes to the doctor appointments with me because of my memory. She actually tells the doctor what's going on a lot more than I can. So she's always been there. My wife, and then my daughter, she's 16, but she's if I don't meet her at the door after she comes home from school, she knows I'm in bed. So she comes right upstairs and asks me, "What do you need?" So she's great.
That's sweet.
Good for you.
I also have actually see a therapist.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And one of my biggest things that I totally recommend for any rare disease person to actually talk to a therapist, because people know about the physical condition, but always forget about what it's doing to your brain.
Right.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, in the sarcoidosis community, 2 years ago, we lost 16 people by suicide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then last year, it was 18. It's because of it being so painful, and then people feeling alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I started my organization. Is one of my mantras is "You're not alone." I want to make people know that they have somebody to talk to.
Well, that's excellent. We're going to put a link for your organization on our website for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering, if someone's been recently diagnosed with sarcoidosis, what tips or advice would you have for that person?
First of all, be your own best advocate. Because especially with sarcoidosis, like I told you before, that it's a snowflake disease. Mm-hmm. Even though, there's a lot of doctors that'll treat it by a book, when you can't, because each patient is different. So you have to know, and you have to be able to talk to the doctor and make sure that they treat you, not the disease. That's number one. Number two is, don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of people are always afraid to ask for help, but there are organizations like mine, and then of course the national organization, which I'm an ambassador for. They've grown so big. Our ambassador program from the national point of view, which I helped start. As 4 years ago, there was 17, and now we have 95 national ambassadors.
That's wonderful.
So there are many people out there that can help you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. Frank, I know that you have a social media presence with We Go Health, and that's actually how I found you. And we are going to make sure that we add that link to our website, along with the Long Island Sarcoidosis Research Foundation. Is that right?
It's Sarcoidosis of Long Island.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and then the Research Foundation is a national organization.
Okay, great. Well, we'll put all of those on our website. We'll put links for you.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate it. And then, I also have a Twitter account that's, Sarcoidosis of LI. So if anybody wants to contact me, they're more than welcome to contact me there.
Great.
Okay, great.
Frank, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have learned quite a bit about sarcoidosis. April is actually Sarcoidosis month. So what we're going to do is we've arranged to have this episode right now. We're going to have it edited immediately, and we're going to have it out on our podcast this Tuesday, April 30th.
Thank you so much.
For Sarcoidosis month.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And there's been so many good things happening this year for sarcoidosis, and especially in April. So we're very. I thank you so much for being a part of this and helping us and supporting us.
And Jean, you've got a couple of places that you advertise too, right? With Pinterest.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I put everything on Pinterest and Instagram.
Okay.
And put them on our pages as
Thank
well,
you.
and links for your information.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to talk about sarcoidosis. Since it's actually very on the top of the rare disease list, there are over 200,000, or right around 200,000 people that have sarcoidosis. But so many haven't heard about it. So thank you very much.
Right, you're absolutely. We were honored to have you, and from what you're saying, with the increase in numbers, I think it was a very important show.
And a good number of our followers are medical students who want to know and learn from a patient's perspective. So I'm sure this is going to help them out a lot as well.
Thank you. And just a quick thing about that is our national organization actually helps new students and people who actually want to go into sarcoidosis. They'll pay for their classes. And if they actually want to be a sarcoidosis, specialist,
they
actually have a lot. They have a lot of programs to help them and get pay for their
That's great.
their classes and stuff like that.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at podcastdx@yahoo.com, through our website podcastdx.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.
Till next week.